Good evening. Folks, wrong dude. I'm just the idiot who's announcing stuff. Don't waste your don't don't waste your energy, because I would certainly hope so, because we have now a guest with us who deserves all your energy at its maddest for being just the great man that he is. Please welcome Nicholas Meyer.
Thank you for your energy. Um, I've been asked to say a few words to introduce this film, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. This is like all my stuff, it has to sort of stand on its own, and you will make of it what you will, or what you already have if you've seen it before. The circumstances under which this film were created, I will say something about. I was taken to lunch in London by Frank Mancuso and Martin Davis, who were then running Paramount Pictures, after Star Trek V, and they were not happy with the film, and they didn't want to end films with the original cast on that note. And did I have any ideas for another Star Trek movie to be made, and they named a certain price. And I typically don't get ideas, so I didn't have any. Or if I get them, they stink. So, no, I typically work well with other people's ideas. The whole history of art is a history of cut and paste. We add on to what has gone before. I was not a Star Trek person. I didn't know about that stuff. But by now, after Star Trek 2 and 4, which I worked on, either wrote or directed or both, I knew something about it, but I still didn't have any ideas. But then Leonard Nimoy, who had directed 3 and 4, came to see me, and we had a talk, and he said the following things. He said, the Klingons have always been our stand-ins for the Russians. The wall has just come down in Berlin when we had this conversation. He said, what if the wall comes down in outer space? Who am I if I have no enemy to define me? And I said, oh, and that was literally, I think, all I needed. I said, you know, we start with an intergalactic Chernobyl, and then the Klingon Empire is going to dissolve, and I spieled out the whole story on the basis of this Chernobyl opening, as you will see. I guess it's no secret that we called Gorbachev Gorkon. I thought, well, we need a good villain for Kirk to go up against. And I had been listening to my CD of Christopher Plummer reciting passages from Henry V. And I thought, what fun it would be to have Christopher Plummer in my cast, and maybe I could make him speak Shakespeare all the time. Maybe I could have him see the movie. Anyway, and that's sort of how it came to be. There were big arguments about the budget, because I'm the one who never gets the full budget. I always get the sort of leftovers. But sometimes art can thrive on restrictions. If you don't have money to throw at something, you may have to throw other things. And that's, I guess, sometimes that can be an interesting and profitable exercise. I emphasize profitable in both senses of the word. So I don't want to say any more because I assume, I hope there are some people here who have not seen the film. So you will get to have some surprises. This edition of the film is the so-called director's edition. They wanted to call it a director's cut, but I had changed so little from the original version. I thought this would be deceptive advertising. I tweaked it one or two ways. Most director's cuts, in my opinion, are not improvements on the original release version of the movie. Touch of Evil may be an exception. Director's cuts are always longer, but I'm not sure they're better. Do we really want to go inside the spaceship on Close Encounters? What could you possibly see inside, which is as good as what you can imagine? Because leaving things to the imagination is an important part of how art works. Paintings don't move. Music has no intellectual content. Words are just code on a page. In each case, it is the imaginative contribution of the listener, the reader, the watcher, that completes the experience. The painting moves when it meets your eye. Beethoven becomes profound when it hits your ear. And the words make you laugh or cry on the page when you decode them. Movies and cinema alone have the hideous capacity to do everything for you. So I look for ways to leave things out. I ask you to work on your imaginary forces as you watch Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Thank you.
And please all remember tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, the morning discussion with Nicholas Meyer, and in this case, live long and prosper. Please welcome Nicholas Meyer, the man who saved Star Trek.
I realize this is past my bedtime.
Mine too.
Thank you all for coming out in the cold and at this hour to see this movie again.
Actually, how many of you have seen the film already?
I'm not going to talk a lot, and as I say, I think artists are not the best judges of their own work. I'll tell you a little bit about the background of it, and then I will walk away. I had never watched the Star Trek television series when I was a kid, and it was on TV. I didn't understand anything that was really important about it, because I take such a long time to understand anything. And at the time, all I could see was that silly sets and the silly costumes and the man with the silly pointed ears, and I just clicked the dial and went someplace else. I missed every important, groundbreaking thing that this show was doing. And it was many years later when a friend of mine who was an executive at Paramount suggested that I meet with Harv Bennett, who was assigned to produce the second Star Trek movie, and I said, oh, that's the one with the man with the pointy ears, and she said, you are such a snob. She said, why don't you climb off your high horse and go have a beer with the man, you would like him, which I did. And he showed me the first movie, and I still didn't get it, and we were talking about, I don't knock the first movie, because somebody had to go first where no one had gone before, and you learn from things. So it is not my intention to belittle that movie at all. Because it's easy to learn from, you know, when a work of art is perfect, it resists critical traction. You sort of slide down the surface of it. But when things are flawed a little bit or a lot, you can learn. And I didn't know what I was doing anyway. It was only my second film. The one thing I understood, or thought I understood, was that this reminded me of a series of books that I had read as a kid when I was 12 or 13 about the adventures of Captain Horatio Hornblower, who was a captain in the Royal Navy during the Napoleonic Wars, and he had a girl in every port, he had lots of adventures, and all of this sounded very good to me, and I thought, this is sort of Hornblower in outer space. And once I had the Navy analogy in my head, I got very excited to make my submarines in space movie. And Harv said that draft 5 of the new script was coming. And so I went home and waited, and I woke up and it was 3 weeks later, and I thought, whatever happened to that script? How many people know this story before I go any further? Okay. It's also in my memoir, which you can also buy from Amazon. Why do I always forget to plug my memoir? It's called The View from the Bridge, Memories of Star Trek and a Life in Hollywood.
You all need that.
Yeah. Anyway, so you don't know the story, so I'll tell you. So I said, where's the script? And he said, oh, I can't send it to you. What he actually said was, my tits in a ringer. Okay. I said, what does that mean? He said, it's not good, I can't send it to you. And I said, well, that was draft 5, what about draft 4, draft 3? And he said, kid, you don't get it. It was just 5 different attempts to make a second Star Trek movie. They're not related. So I said, because now I'm jonesing to make my submarines in space movie, Hornblower in space. So I said, well, send me the 5 drafts. And he said, really? I said, yeah. And in those days, you didn't hit send. A truck drove up. And I'm a slow reader. So I'm reading all these things, and then I invited Harv Bennett and his producing partner, Robert Sallin, to my house. And I had a notepad, and I said, I have an idea. Why don't we make a list of all the things that we like in these 5 scripts? It could be a major plot, it could be a subplot, it could be a sequence, it could be a scene, it could be a character, it could be a line of dialogue, I don't care. Just make this list, and then I'll try to write a new screenplay and incorporate as many of these things that we choose as possible. They did not seem happy.
And I said, what's wrong? I thought it was a really cool idea. And they said, the problem is that if we don't have a screenplay in 12 days, ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, cannot guarantee delivery of the shots in time for the June opening. And I said, what June opening? And they said, oh, the movie's going to open June, whatever it was. And I said, this is only the second movie I've ever directed. I said, you booked the movie into theaters and there's no movie? And they said, well, that's the way it's always done. I said, okay, so let's make the list and I'll try to do this in 12 days. You know, and they still were not happy. And I said, well, now what's wrong? And they said, oh, we couldn't even make your deal in 12 days. That's when I made my big mistake. I said, look, forget my deal, forget the money, forget the credit. I'm already contracted to direct the thing. That's in ink, and I've signed. But if we don't do this now, fucking now, you're not gonna make your June open. There's not gonna be any movie. My agent, when he later heard this story, realized that he had been wrong ever to think of studying for the priesthood. It's because he wanted to kill me. Anyway, so we picked. And I won't tell you all the things we picked because maybe some people haven't seen. So I don't want to give away stuff. But we picked, 5 or 6 things. And there was one sequence that didn't involve Spock that was in the middle of the movie, and we moved it to the front of the movie, and we put him in, that kind of thing. Mushed it around. There was a character named Savick, and we kept that, and so on. And most of the dialogue, I would say 90% of the dialogue is mine. Harv wrote a few lines. And basically in 12 days, we had something to work from. It wasn't that it didn't keep changing, because we kept fixing it and tweaking it and fine-tuning it. And I don't remember anything about the 12 days, except that my back was out at the end of it. So I can't tell you how it happened. I'll end with one story that has nothing to do with Star Trek, but a lot to do with creativity as I understand it. If you read Plato, Socrates is told by the oracle at Delphi that he's the wisest man in Greece. And he thinks, that can't be right. And all it needs to disprove the oracle is to find somebody wiser than himself. So he goes to all segments of Greek societies, talking to various people. And finally he said it got to the poets, by which I think he means painters, sculptors, whatever. I think he meant men, but for our purposes, you can expand it to everybody. He said, surely these people who write and sculpt and paint so insightfully about the human condition will prove to be wiser than I. And he said, I was astonished to find out that the poets were the stupidest people I talked to. It was unbelievable. They were like children, except when they did their art. And then they go into a kind of trance, during which time they take dictation from God. And this they call inspiration. And then when they come out of it, they go back to being idiots again. I am nowhere claiming to take dictation from God. I just know that I can't remember what happened. I was busy. I hope you enjoy the film. Thank you very much. want to know?
Because we have only about 10 minutes, folks. Go for it. Bang, bang, bang. And there's one hand already, please.
Why? I'm not sure. Well, it may be that I'm not that positive a person.
So there's no actual real reason. It's just,
Well, it's,
you're so cynical.
I see no evidence of human progress other than technology. We have buttons to push, but I don't see any change. He says the first is the man who has run out of ideas, but we raise fists all the time. And by the way, the proof of this is art. If things had changed, we wouldn't be weeping at Oedipus or Hamlet or other art from ancient times. Cave paintings can move us because we are the same as the person who made those paintings. Nothing has changed anyway.
And she makes an extraordinary decision. So I guess mankind can't do all of that. And in your films often have something extremely hopeful.
Well, he says every age is the same. It is only love that makes any of them bearable. Do we have other?
Yes, that's what I also just wanted. Background, I see a red arm. Speak up, young lady. Give it your all.
So why does Amy go back? Because she's the one who makes the ultimate sacrifice, but she no longer can have a job or her own. So why did you ultimately decide to have Amy return rather than stay for her time?
Well, I know that H.G. Wells married a woman named Amy Robbins. Actually, I think she was his cousin.
There's a question over there.
It was my idea. It was all my idea. Well, he was a wonderful, this was the first movie I ever made, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I probably still don't. And I remember he said to me, I act with my eyes, I'm very, I'm worried about these glasses, and I said, don't worry, everybody will see your eyes, which everybody does. You learn about the glass is interesting to sort of skin the cat, how to make the movie for less money. So at one point, I said, we have his house in London, and then we have the museum that is devoted to him. Maybe we could save some money by taking all the things that are in the London house and making them part of the museum exhibit. That would save some money. And then I thought, wouldn't it be funny if he left something in his house that he forgot, and then he needed them, glasses, and the extra set of glasses in the desk. I think that art thrives on restrictions. That when you don't have money to throw at something, then you have to start being more creative or clever or ingenious. If you look at the Olivier
Henry V movie, which was made in the middle of World War II for about $3. You can see how ingenious you can be and make, you know, one of the greatest movies of all time. So those were my sort of thinking about the glasses, sort of, yeah. Anyway, right there. Well, I would love to answer that, but I can't because it's so long ago. The only thing I can tell you is that when I write, I have good writing days and bad writing days. And then when it's finished, I can never remember. I read the whole thing, I can't remember, oh, that was a good writing day.
Why actually this? Nick, why actually the city of San Francisco?
Well, I'm from New York City, and in 1971, I drove across country by myself to seek my fortune in the movie business where I knew no one. I had never been to Los Angeles. I didn't even know it was by the water. But I did have an aunt who lived in San Francisco. So I went to see my aunt, and I lived with her for a month, and I fell in love with the city of San Francisco. And I just, when I came time to make the movie, first of all, my friend Carl Alexander, who wrote the story, he set it in San Francisco, and I thought, oh, that's great, I can put in all the places in San Francisco that I loved. The revolving restaurant and the Panamanian exposition that she lives next door to, all those things. You know, and then when we did Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, which is another time travel story, and they go from the future back to San Francisco instead of from the past. And I remember saying, does it have to be San Francisco? I've already done that. Can't they go to Paris? And they said something about the whales wouldn't fit in the sand, but San Francisco both times.
Any other questions on your part?
They just want to get warm, and I don't blame them.
Anything else? What? Oh, what the format? It's 35 millimeter.
It's 35 millimeter. It was filmed in the CinemaScope 238, 235. Why did I choose the CinemaScope format? Because I wanted to show as much modernity as possible in the frame. And I just thought I could show more. It wasn't a lot of movie that looked up at skyscrapers so much as it looked this way and that way. CinemaScope is a very tricky frame. George Stevens said, oh yes, when they invented it, you found the perfect frame to photograph a man lying down. Figure out how to use it. And I'm not sure that I always did, by the way, because as I say, I didn't really know what I was doing.
There's a question over there.
Yeah.
So very I know if you now could travel back in time, is there anything that you would like to change or make differently to the movie now that you are new?
It's a very interesting question. All directors, when they look at their movies, are thinking of ways where you could have made it better. I never read anything that I wrote 6 weeks or 6 years later without wanting to reach for a pencil. And I think, by the way, that this whole idea of the director's cut, which is always fascinating, the director's cut. Director's cuts are always longer,
No?
But they are all not necessarily any better. The only one that may be better is the Walter Murch revision of A Touch of Evil, which is basically the way Wells wanted it. But usually it's not better. I made a lot of mistakes making this movie. And I feel that the movie works despite them, because the script is very, very strong. The acting is very, very good. Stay in focus. So the fact that I didn't know what I was doing the rest of the time, I think artists are not the best judges of their own work. I think that mostly I get away with it. But the climactic moment at the end where the Ripper's watch gets caught on I don't think I filmed it quite right. And there were other scenes that I didn't film right, and I had to cut them out entirely. Some of which I put into Star Trek VI, because by that time I was in the same situation. I could make things work that didn't. So yes, there are loads of things that I wish that I had done differently. When I came to make this movie, I had written many scripts, so I knew about writing. I had directed a lot of stage plays and a lot of radio plays, so I knew about working with actors. I had tried to be an actor. I was a bad actor. You hear about them, but you never meet them. And so the one thing I didn't know about was the camera. I even knew about editing, because I had done a lot of that. But when Steven Spielberg was playing with his camera, I was playing with a typewriter. You know, you can tell.
I'm afraid we will have to basically already close it now, because the nice stakes taking care of the place are really, really angry. But, folks, if you still do certain that Nicholas Meyer will gladly answer them outside, and he will be around for the rest of the festival. So don't worry, no question shall remain unanswered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.